Well, welcome back once again as I continue to try to make progress on these two stagecoaches that used to run in Yellowstone Park. When I started with my brother-in-law Rick in 1979, the first contract that he had received was to restore one original 8-passenger Yellowstone coach and then build a second duplicate alongside of it. So that's where I really kind of started cutting my teeth on carriage building. And I saw those coaches about 20 years later, and I asked the man who still had one here locally. He brought it in to have some tires tightened up. I said, please, would you let me fix that? Because I have changed in what I know now as compared to what I knew then. So it got me to thinking back on that time frame when Rick and I were just started. And we were looking for information on coach building. And the Smithsonian put out a set of plans, made them available. You could buy them for $3 or $4 a piece. And they were advertised as working plans for carriage building. So when we finally did receive those plans and I started looking through them, the first thing I realized was there's no way I can build a coach duplicated after these so-called working plans or working drawings of these coaches of different styles. I didn't know what went on the inside, even though I was beginning to get a glimpse of that as we restored this original Yellowstone coach and duplicated the second. So I was getting a picture of some of the joint work. But looking at these plans, I think even you now could look at that and say, could I actually build one of these off of these working plans? So as I browse through these, kind of watch and see if there's any particular one that stands out to you or catches your eye. And if you've been following along for a while, kind of analyze what you have learned in the past 8-9 years that you've been watching these videos. Would I know how to build those wheels? Would I understand how the undercarriages go together? What about some of these curved seats and bodies? Do I understand all the framework and the joinery that goes on inside of those? Because you now have 8 to 9 years of more information than I had when I started. And some of you might say, there's no way, I don't even have the skill sets to do the woodworking or the metalworking or the painting or the upholstery. But even as you just look at these working plans, you already can conceptualize what's happening inside, and it's not even being shown because you have seen it take place here. And that's part of the purpose of all these videos. It allows you in your mind's eye to look at a set of plans like this and say, now I have a little better understanding of what is not seen, what is not shown, because I've seen it. In the carriage terminology book by Don Berkebile, and I often refer to that or list it in the description, it is a really nice book. And even over the past few years that I have been sharing these videos, I have shared some old pictures of Yellowstone coaches that I have restored in the past, both the 8-passenger and a couple of 11 passengers. So you've been able to see the finished product, but oftentimes when the customer brings these type of coaches in, they see the start and they see the finish, but they never see the process of what it takes to get there. So this is something that I find enjoyable to show, the process of the inside workings, especially on these Yellowstone coaches, but just in general overall, how horse-drawn vehicles, wagons and buggies and stagecoaches go together. So with all that being said, I do need to get my short little frameworks assembled in between the two seats. And having these lined up now, I just have to make sure that these center ones line up as well. This one lays out just a little bit, less than 1/8 of an inch. So I just need to stand that up a little bit. Probably won't take much. Right there. Lucked out on that one, right where it needs to be. So we're straight in line between both of these short braces and the seat as well. Just right. So the joint work here needs to match the joints on either side, but it's actually going to be an open joint because I'll trim it off at the top level of this joint. So I actually just need the location of the bottom of that joint. It'd be right there. And whatever the thickness of that joint is, that's where it'll get cut off. And I do have a little jig here that matches the curve lined up with that joint. Allows me to put a square on a curved joint. And that's just what I'm going to do where that joint gets cut. So now we need a lateral that's going to go right through the center of this side panel. It's going to joint into this front frame, and it needs to joint into the back frame here as well, but I don't really know exactly where that's going to be yet. I think we're close to 8 feet long, and we're going to be probably 3/4 of an inch thick by about 1 1/8 inches. So I'd like to figure out this back frame, even though I'm not ready to build it quite yet. So this back frame comes into the main frame right in this joint here, and it's sandwiched in by a couple of pretty heavy irons. So these irons here are going to help give me the shape that I need for this framework here, along with my back panel that I still have. And this is the back panel that came off of this 11-passenger coach, such as it is. That framework that we just looked at actually is the right side, so it would fit right into this piece here, and it's a portion of this outside frame. I'm going to stand that up and see if I can't piece this together to get a pattern of just how this is all going to sit, so I can get a measurement for that side lateral brace. So that iron would come up right through here. You can see the imprint that the iron left as it set right through here. So what's on that main frame fits this curve. And I'm not really ready to disassemble this quite yet. So I'm going to see if I can kind of mock up a pattern here between this back brace or the back frame and tie it into the main frame here. And so you just kind of get a feel for the curve and how it's going to set. The majority of coaches that I have restored in the past, these rear panel frames have usually been in pretty good shape. The early ones were actually sawn out and laminated. This one seems to be steam bent. So when it comes right down to it, I will have to make a form and do some steam bending. But this is just to give me a rough idea. I think that iron looks like it stops about right here. If I can get kind of the general slope here, I'll switch to the framework that's on the main frame and see if I can't tie it together. Main frame is right about here. Allow for our iron. A little bit of a guessing game. I think we need to be a little tighter. I think if I can remove this frame, I might be able to get inside and get a little better measurement there. I'm gonna prop this up out of the way a little bit, maybe. Actually, pretty good right there. Might be good enough to get an idea where our lateral is going to come to. This back frame doesn't sit completely vertical. Actually leans back a bit. Probably more in that category. As I turn this side over, so this is the right side, you can see right here where that lateral comes in. And it seems to be above the main frame, maybe 3.5 inches or so. So if it comes in somewhere in this category here, it's generally going to give me a rough idea of what length I need for my lateral. And I'll probably make it strong. See what I end up with. 92, 93. If I started out with 94 to 96, somewhere close to 8 feet, that'll give me plenty enough room to kind of tune it in. And if I rough guess from the end of my frame to the back here, if I allow 8 inches, I can calculate what I need for that 8-passenger also. Looks like 6 feet should cover this 8-passenger. So 8 for the 11 and 6 for the 8. You know, it seems like generation by generation has ended up lately being nicknamed. My parents were part of the silent generation. And I think that's an effect of World War II when they came home and they were just silent. They didn't talk about much. And then we were the result of that, the baby boomer generation, and then there's the millennials and the Gen Xers and wherever it goes from there. But I remember the generation of my parents in multiple homes of our friends. Oftentimes you would go into some portion of the house and they would have plates displayed perhaps of where they've been, or they oftentimes would have different sayings. And that was the case in my parents' home. They had a display all around the kitchen of these different plates with sayings on them. And some of them were cute, and some of them my dad thought was funny, and some of them my mom thought was funny, and they weren't always the same. There were some sayings like, kiss and don't last, cook and do, and behind every successful man is a woman telling him he's wrong. You know which one that was funny for. But there was also one, too soon old and too late smart. And sometimes I think that applies to me here. Too soon old and too late smart. I'm messing around with this rear curve, and I didn't want to take apart the metal frame on the right side until I walked by a table that I have here and realized that I had already taken apart the left side and have it sandblasted. So I just need to put that on, and that'll actually give me a position of this rear framework. Too soon old and too late smart. I had it marked out where it comes up to the end of the framework here. So that'll actually give me a little better clue where that should be. I'm actually not too far off of it. I may be a little bit off of my curve, but this is just to give me an idea of my length, and we're pretty close actually. One of the drawbacks of me cutting all these joints in kind of freehand is they are not all exactly the same. So I've got to do a little custom fitting at some of these joints as well. I have plenty past the front and extended well in back of the rear frame, so we've got plenty of room to trim all this up. And this is where my joints need to be. So now that my joints fit, I do need to chamfer off these corners. And I can only come back this far at this point. There's one more rib cage for the rear seat that has to go here. And when I actually get the rear frame bent and installed, then this will get jointed into that rear frame. So for right now, put it together, take it apart. Put it together, take it apart. So this lateral will actually help secure the side panel when we get to that point. I still need to trim this down in thickness to accommodate this panel. And once that is trimmed down, then you can see that I'm going to have to put some type of a bend into this to bring it around into this panel to continue that body shape. And we'll have to bend this as well once we come in to bringing it into the rear frame of the back panel. So hopefully this helps you see some more of the inside joint work on some of these carriages and stagecoaches. That's when you find some of these so-called working drawings, they really don't show this type of detail. Anyway, we're making some more progress. Appreciate you coming along. Thanks for watching.